There are over 8,800 named cheeses in the world, and most people are loyal to about three of them, which is a tragedy I'm going to spend the next 12 minutes trying to fix. Cheese was discovered by accident, the way most great things are. The leading theory is that somewhere around 10,000 years ago, a person in the ancient Middle East stored fresh milk in a pouch made from a calf's stomach, traveled somewhere, opened it later, and found that the milk had separated into curds and liquid. The stomach lining contains rennet, an enzyme that causes milk proteins to coagulate to clump together and firm up. What that traveler found was the first cheese. Whether they were brave enough to eat it says something admirable about human hunger and something even more admirable about human curiosity. From that accidental discovery, an entire civilization of dairy culture was born, and today, cheese is one of the most scientifically complex, regionally specific, emotionally loaded foods on the planet. People don't just eat cheese, they identify with it. They argue about it. They carry it across borders wrapped in their luggage because they cannot find the right version at home. That level of devotion starts with understanding what makes each type different, and that starts with milk. Fresh cheese is where everyone begins, and it is the most honest form cheese takes. No aging, no rind, no transformation, just milk that has been curdled, drained, and eaten within days of being made. Ricotta is the archetype. It's made from whey, the liquid left over, after other cheeses are produced heated until the remaining proteins rise to the surface, then skimmed off and drained. The result is soft, milky, faintly sweet, and so delicate that it barely holds itself together. Ricotta made fresh in a small southern Italian dairy and ricotta in a plastic tub from a supermarket cold aisle are technically the same product. In practice, they are barely related. Fresh fur soft goat cheese falls into the same category. Young, white, slightly crumbly, with that distinctive tang that comes from the different fatty acid profile of goat's milk compared to cows. That tang is not gaminess. That is flavor, and it deserves more credit than people give it. Fresh mozzarella also lives here, made by heating curd and stretching it by hand in hot water until it becomes smooth and elastic, a process called pasta filata that requires both speed and confidence, then shaped into balls and sold swimming in whey. Eat it the same day it's made. The next day, it is already something slightly lesser. The moment you introduce salt, thyme, and the right environment, fresh cheese begins its transformation into something else entirely. And that's where semi-soft cheese enters the conversation. Havarti, the Danish staple, is a mild, buttery, slightly springy cheese that melts beautifully and asks very little from you in return. It is not a challenging cheese. It is a generous one, the kind of thing you put on a sandwich without thinking and then realize 3 bites in that it made everything better. Fontina from the Aosta Valley in northwestern Italy is in the same family but more serious. Aged longer, it develops a richer, earthier, almost mushroom-like depth, and it is one of the great melting cheeses in the world, the traditional base of fonduta, the Italian cousin of fondue, where the cheese is melted with egg yolks and truffles into something close to edible velvet. Munster, not the American orange ring deli version, but genuine French Munster from the Alsace region, is pungent, soft-centered, and washed in brine during aging to encourage a specific type of bacteria on the rind that gives it a smell considerably more aggressive than its flavor. This is worth knowing about washed rind cheeses generally. The smell is almost always a bluff. The rind intimidates. The interior rewards. Never judge a cheese by what it does to the air around it. The leap from semi-soft to semi-hard cheese is where cheese becomes what most people picture when they close their eyes and think about a cheese board. Gouda is the most consumed cheese type on earth, which sounds like a pop chart statistic but is actually worth sitting with. Hundreds of millions of people across dozens of countries and cultures reach for Gouda more than anything else. Young Gouda, mild, smooth, almost sweet, is approachable in a way that asks nothing from the person eating it. But aged Gouda, held for a year or 2 or sometimes 5, or fat, they are tyrosine crystals. Pure amino acid deposits that develop only in properly aged cheese, and biting into them delivers a concentrated, savory burst that is genuinely unlike anything else in the dairy world. The flavor of a 5-year aged Gouda is deep, caramelized, butterscotch tinged, and complex in a way that makes young Gouda taste like a rough draft. Manchego from the La Mancha region of Spain is the aged sheep's milk equivalent firm. rich with a slight graininess and a flavor that carries the lanolin warmth of the animal it came from, something cow's milk cheese rarely delivers. The distinctive basket weave pattern pressed into its rind is one of the most recognizable visuals in the entire cheese world, and it comes from the traditional esparto grass molds that Manchego was historically pressed in. Gruyère sits at the more serious end of this family's Swiss, nutty, complex, with small, irregular holes that form during aging from carbon dioxide produced by specific bacteria. It melts without breaking, which makes it the foundation of a proper French onion soup gratin, the binding agent in a real croque monsieur, and the cheese that has probably improved more European comfort food than any other single variety. Hard cheese is where patience becomes flavor, and nobody understood this better than the monks, farmers, and cheesemakers of medieval Europe who built traditions that are still running today. Parmigiano-Reggiano is the most regulated food product in Italy, protected by a consortium that controls everything from which cows produce the milk to the exact geographic zone where it can be made. The wheels weigh about 88 pounds each and are aged for a minimum of 12 months, though the best ones run to 24, 36, or even 48 months. What happens during that time is extraordinary. The moisture content drops to around 30%. The texture shifts from supple to grainy to almost crystalline. The flavor concentrates into something intensely savory, salty, and rich with umami, because the protein breakdown that occurs during long aging produces free glutamates, the same compounds that make soy sauce and aged meat taste so deeply satisfying. Those white crystals throughout a properly aged Parmigiano are not salt, they are the same tyrosine crystals found in old Gouda, physical evidence of transformation and time. Grana Padano is its less famous neighbor, produced in the Po Valley under slightly looser regulations and aged for a shorter period, which makes it milder and less expensive, but still a serious cheese worthy of more attention than it typically gets. Pecorino Romano, made from sheep's milk and aged hard, is saltier and sharper than Parmigiano. It was the grating cheese of ancient Rome, and Roman soldiers were issued a ration of it daily, which makes it one of the oldest continuously produced foods still eaten in its original form. When a recipe from ancient Rome calls for cheese, it almost certainly means pecorino. You can still taste what they tasted. That continuity is something I find quietly remarkable. Blue cheese is the category that divides people more cleanly than almost any other food, and the division is entirely about mold, which is fair, but also a shame. The blue and green veins running through a Roquefort or a Gorgonzola or a Stilton are Penicillium roqueforti, a specific mold species that produces enzymes breaking down the fat in the cheese into shorter fatty acid chains, which are responsible for the sharp, pungent, intensely complex flavor that makes blue cheese lovers evangelical and blue cheese skeptics physically recoil. Roquefort is the oldest, the proudest, and in my opinion the best. Made exclusively from the milk of Lacan sheep, aged in the natural limestone caves of Convolou in southern France, it has been produced in essentially the same way since at least the 11th century. The caves have a unique microclimate-specific humidity, specific temperature, natural ventilation through fissures in the rock called fluorines that cannot be replicated anywhere else on Earth. Roquefort protected by French law, which means that a cheese made with sheep's milk and aged in those caves can carry the name and nothing else can. The flavor is intense, creamy, salty, and complex in a way that builds as you chew rather than hitting all at once. Gorgonzola from Lombardy comes in two forms: dolce, which is young, soft, and mild enough to convert skeptics, and picante, which is aged longer and carries a sharpness that demands you pay attention. Stilton from the English Midlands has a crumblier texture and a slightly more restrained pungency than Roquefort, making it arguably the most approachable of the great blues, and it is traditionally paired with port wine in a combination that is one of the more quietly civilized things Britain has ever produced. Soft, ripened cheese brie and camembert and their relations look gentle and look approachable, and in their mass market versions often are, but at their authentic best, they are some of the most complex cheeses made anywhere. The white rind on a brie is not decorative. It is alive. It is Penicillium camemberti, a mold that grows on the surface of the cheese during aging and releases enzymes inward, slowly breaking down the paste from the outside in. In the United States, pasteurization laws prevent the import of many authentic raw milk soft ripened cheeses, which means that what most Americans know as brie is a mild, inoffensive, commercially produced version that shares a shape and a name with the real thing. The real thing smells like earth and mushrooms and something faintly animal, and it tastes like an entire landscape compressed into a single bite. Processed cheese is the one I'm going to defend, and I know how that sounds. American cheese, the individually wrapped slices, the Velveeta blocks, the cheese product that melts into a liquid sheet the moment heat touches it, is not natural cheese. It was invented in 1916 by James Kraft, who was trying to solve a practical problem. Real cheese doesn't melt evenly, it breaks and turns greasy under heat, and it has an unpredictable shelf life. Kraft processed cheese by blending real cheese with emulsifying salt sodium citrate, primarily, which stabilized the proteins, and created a product that melts smoothly every single time without breaking. The result is not complex, it does not have terroir, it will never appear on a cheese board at a wine tasting. But it has a specific function it performs perfectly, and that function is the reason a McDonald's cheeseburger has a different texture than a burger made with cheddar. Cheese, at its core, is transformation. It is what happens when you take something as simple and perishable as milk and apply time, bacteria, salt, mold, pressure, and heat in different combinations to produce something that can last for years and taste like nowhere else on earth. The caves of Roquefort, the Po Valley fog that surrounds a Parmigiano wheel, the salt air of the Normandy coast that finds its way into a raw milk camembert. Every wheel of serious cheese carries the geography of where it was made, the season the milk was collected, the specific microbes that happen to be present in that particular aging room on that particular day. No two wheels are exactly identical. No two are exactly the same experience. The person who eats only 3 cheeses their whole life and calls it enough is not wrong, but they are missing something. And what they are missing keeps getting better the further in they go. Stay hungry.